All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another key conversation on mental health. Really excited for today's conversation. We have joining with us Johnny Hanna, CEO and founder of Homey, and Amelia Wilcox, CEO and founder of Nivati. Today, I think is going to be a really great conversation. We're talking about how leadership can lead the charge with vulnerability, conversation on empathy and what it takes to be an empathetic leader. And kind of how that affects the culture of a company. So it's going to be from a position or point of view from the executive leadership within a company, which I think is really important. Oftentimes, when we talk about mental health and introducing the conversations of mental health, it really makes a huge difference within the company when it starts from the top, and we have a leadership that actually can kind of bring in those topics and those conversations, and everybody just feels a little bit safer. So we have two excellent leaders here with us today, and we really appreciate both your time. Johnny, thank you for joining us. And looks like you're in a car, but not driving, so we hope you stay safe. Buckled up, though. Excellent. And Amelia, thank you again for your time, as always, for joining us. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and just have a couple icebreaker questions. We've been asking a couple questions for everybody just to kind of get everybody in the mood and in the mind frame of mental health. And so I've got three in particular that I wanted to ask both of you. So we'll start with you, Amelia. As much as I know you, I actually don't know the answer to any of these questions, so I'm really excited for this. Okay. All right, so first question is, what is your go-to music when you want to either focus or block out the world?
Go-to music. So yeah, like if I'm working in my home office and I'm just focused on getting work done, I turn on slack guitar music is what I listen to right now. So I'm like obsessed with Hawaii, and it just makes me feel really relaxed, and like everything else kind of melts away. So just like super chill kind of ukulele and Hawaiian style.
All instrumental or with words?
Well, instrumental preferably. I was a vocal soloist, like a competitive soloist in high school, and
I didn't know that.
I am like super sensitive to like words and lyrics and things like that. So I can't not listen to what a song's about. Like my husband can listen to music and be like, "Oh, I just like the beat or like the melody or whatever," and I'm like, I can't not hear the words. So there you go.
All right, Johnny. How about you? What's your go-to music when you want to focus or block out the world?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was just one-wheeling yesterday on the Mapleton Trail. I live in Mapleton, and I had an old song come up from that I'd listened to from Five for Fighting, and I had my headphones in, and I was just singing as loud as I possibly could. And I was alone on the trail, for at least from what I remember. And I blocked out the world pretty good doing that. So, but yeah, I would say normally like meditative sessions, I typically go to, more earthy sounds, like waves crashing and whatnot.
All right. I like it. Do either of you, so this could be like a hit or miss question, but do either of you have a good luck charm or a good luck superstition before you do a LinkedIn Live conversation?
This is my first LinkedIn Live.
Oh, it's first of all. All right. Well, when you go to an event, I mean, you guys always doing big events and different things and speaking at different conferences. Do you have like a good luck charm or a superstition? Do you wear the same socks? Anything like that? Rabbit's foot that you rub? No? All right.
I can't think of anything.
I have, if I'm on stage, like giving a keynote or something like that, I have a couple pairs of red heels, and like I feel super powerful in my red heels. So they're like if I'm pitching, or speaking at an event or something like that, I will wear those. So they're kind of my, I guess, good luck charm in a way.
Power heels. I like it.
Yeah, and now that you say that, Amelia, I would say mine is a new haircut. If I have a really good fade, I feel like $1 million ready to present to the world.
Okay. All right. I like it. A good haircut and power heels. All right. Last question, and then we'll get into the topic. What is your food of choice when you're stress eating or kind of self-soothing with food?
Mother's cookies.
But
Mother's
like
cookies,
your
that's very
own mom's
specific.
cookies.
No, like the animal
brand.
cookies. You know?
Oh,
Yeah, the brand.
oh, yeah. The brand Mother's cookies. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, for me,
How
it's
about you, Amelia?
cookies and cookie dough. Just all the kinds, crumbles. My favorite is actually my 13-year-old daughter's cookies, so I'll have her make me cookies, and I eat the dough and the cookies. But yeah, I'm a big cookie person.
All right, I love me some good baked goods, cookies in particular. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and start the conversation. Thank you for participating in that. I think it's great to get to know you in different ways there. I wanted to start the conversation around empathy. Johnny, you and I have actually not had really a lot of conversations together. I know you and Amelia are pretty close, but I've heard you speak at different conferences, and I have the assumption that you are very empathetic and vulnerable in the way you lead your company. That could be totally a wrong assumption there, but I feel pretty good in that and safe in that assumption. Would you confirm or deny that you consider yourself rather empathetic? Putting you on the spot here, so I hope you don't mind.
I think it's a choice, and I think I try to. I think I try to be empathetic and I try to be vulnerable. So,
right.
I've put an effort to do that.
Which I think is really admirable, just putting the effort in. I personally, I'm not empathetic at all. I struggle with that. In fact, I always have to remind myself what the definition is. And so we're going to level set, make sure everybody who's paying attention and watching understands empathy. So I pulled this definition, and I've got a great quote from Walt Whitman that I wanted to share to kind of help explain it. So empathy, experts define empathy as the capacity to A, be affected by or share the emotional state of another, B, assess the reasons for the other state, and C, identify with the other, adopting his or her perspective. And Walt Whitman had this really great quote, which I kind of lifted off of a blog as I was reading about empathy this week. And it says, I do not ask the wounded person how he feels. I myself become the wounded person. So that's what empathy is, which for me is really a difficult position to put myself into. But you say you try really hard to be empathetic. I think it comes across pretty authentic in the few instances that I've seen you, and you as well, Amelia, for that matter. How is it that you try? Like, what is it that you're doing to try to be more empathetic?
Amelia, or a question for me or Amelia?
Either one. Let's start with you, Amelia.
I would say it is not my natural state to be empathetic. But yeah, I would say like it takes a lot of intention, and I've actually done a lot of therapy personally. In fact, my husband and I I'm like, you're reading that definition. My husband and I are in the middle of a big, pretty intense therapeutic experience with one of our kids who's really struggling. And part of what we're learning on our like parent side in this like parallel path of therapy is how our actions and parenting styles contribute to the challenges that our child is having. And anyway, so a lot of what you're saying is like being affected by and sharing the emotional state. Like also, I think with that comes like with that understanding comes like validating it and saying like, man, that must be really hard. Sometimes we tend to be like dismissive or like, oh, toughen up, you should just get over it. And other times, maybe I personally try to fix it, right? I'm a fixer. I'll just be like, oh, this is the problem you're having? Well, go do this. Like, instead of what they really need is like that validation and that connection and empathy of like, yeah, this is really hard. Like, and how are you going to solve that? So this is like something that's very top of mind for me right now because all of my spare time is spent working on like therapeutic stuff right now with my family. So
Right.
it's not a natural strength of mine and something that I'm working on.
Right. Yeah. I can relate quite a bit there, I think, as well. How about for you, Johnny? How have you increased your capacity for empathy over the years?
I really like Amelia's answer, and yeah, I actually feel like we do have those stereotypes naturally. Like I was brought up, being told to man up, to cowboy up, not to share my feelings, not to get curious about myself, just, move on and get the task finished. But I've put a lot more work and effort into getting curious around my emotions and more in touch with how I feel. And naturally, by putting in effort to do that, I have a lot more curiosity as to how others feel. And it's, I think just the more I work on myself in whatever category, I naturally then have a different lens and perception for those that I work with, for those that I interact with. So that's how it's increased for me, is just the more time that I try to self-reflect. I think that naturally helps me with others.
I like that. So Amelia, going back to you, right now you're kind of like in the throes of empathetic learning and therapeutic learning, right, with your family situation. But are you seeing that reflect in how you talk and communicate and the relationships you have outside of the family, and your work and your employees and whatnot?
Yeah, 100%. I like echo what Johnny said. It's like the more we work on ourselves, the better we are with everyone else, and it carries over into all the areas of my life. So even just practicing, like, I think everyone at some point has learned how to use like I feel statements, right? And so going back through the exercise of like, instead of getting caught up in like the semantics or details of certain things, just expressing how you feel about certain things puts you in a different position, because people can't argue with your feelings because they're subjective, right? But if you talk about specific instances or events or anything like that, then people can just like latch on to, well, no, that's not true, that's not how it happened, and like and it can escalate and end in a lot of frustration. So using like those I feel statements and reflective listening, this is just, it's all stuff I'm practicing right now. So I'm like, yes, I understand how that would be really hard for you. And it can sound like patronizing. So, but I think the more you practice it, the less patronizing and the more natural that it feels. But in the beginning, it's really awkward. But I've already been through this process of like using those types of communication tools in the past, because I've done lots of therapy throughout my life, but I'm just relearning them right now. And but it gives me the ability to do some of the same things with team members too. People are coming to me with a frustration instead of just like going, and that's the feedback actually I get from my board, is like, you've got to stop fixing it for everyone else, because that doesn't scale. So trying to be like, oh yeah, that is really frustrating, I'm sorry to hear that, how are you going to solve that, instead of just being the
right. Okay.
It definitely carries over. It's just, it takes a lot of practice for me
specifically. As an A-type personality, which is kind of the common, I guess, type of personality for CEOs and leaders. And Johnny, I don't know if you consider yourself A-type or not, but you want to be in a position to fix that problem when somebody comes to you, team members, whatever the case may be. And as, like you said, Amelia, it's not scalable, right? So how do you how have you trained yourself? You have to retrain yourself over and over and over again, it sounds like.
Are you asking me, or are you asking Johnny?
Yeah, sorry. We'll go with you, Johnny. Have you had to retrain yourself as well, like Amelia was saying, on how to not be the problem solver, but more just the empathetic listener?
Yeah, I don't know if retrain is the right word for me. I think just train in general. Like I'm learning as I go, and again, my lens, my view has changed over the last several years, and it continues to change as I continue to educate myself and understand a little bit more deeply of how others see and think and how I behave. But yeah, I mean, I think naturally you want to problem solve, and you have pressure to do it, especially if you've raised money as a company, or you have, I bootstrapped my last business, and if a few clients quit, and you don't have that revenue coming in to pay paychecks, then you go into a control mode, and you want to control, you want to fix, you want to solve every problem as fast as humanly possible. And so, at times I would say, even when fire drills happen now, I still find myself going to fix it mode. And that's where I don't think it's retraining. Maybe it's reminding myself at this point, like,
right.
Okay, there's a fire drill. how am I going to react? Am I going to go into control mode and boss everybody around? Or am I going to be more collaborative and work together as a team? So yeah, I mean, it almost feels like, depending on how I wake up that day, like if I'm in a funk and haven't been working on myself, or I'm struggling, I think the natural place that I go to is control and fix it mode.
Right. As you kind of work through this, Johnny, within your organization, and again, I've seen you in certain situations at conferences and different things like that, but it feels like you're pretty vulnerable and honest and upfront with how your employees are. How does that kind of change your culture? Like, they see you working on this and trying not to be and fix it. Like, they see you being more empathetic in the organization. Have you seen like a shift in culture as you've kind of adopted or trained yourself to have kind of a more vulnerable or empathetic approach to your management style?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if it's affected the entire company, but I definitely know that it's affected certain individuals. I've had different individuals approach me and bring up different vulnerable conversations that I don't think they would have had I not been open. And even just thinking about this call this morning, like, I'm taking this from my car. I was just with my daughter at her school. She had a little show and tell event from 10 to 11. And I can't tell you the amount of shame I would have had the last 12 years in business about going to a school event in the middle of the workday. Like, growing up, my dad and I, we worked out of town. Like, he would take me on all of his construction projects, and we were just gone. We were gone always. Or when there were projects in town, there was no coming back home, and so I had been trained to just work nonstop, and to think that if you leave work, or you're not, you don't do a quick lunch, then you're not a hard worker and you're lazy. And so those are things that have been in my head. So if I take off work, I still have shame. Like, I still have to battle through my shame of just going to my daughter's show and tell. And so with that, like, as I'm vulnerable, I know some of my partners or other colleagues that take vacation. I don't know if they're like me, but they're, they might have shame about going on vacation, and that they're going to be away from work and not, and it's a critical time right now. It's always a critical time, right? Whatever time you're taking off at work, it feels so. So I think, just as I share that alone, I think people could empathize with me and my situation. And as I share that, they then can recognize I will empathize with them. And I told my wife this the other day. I said, anybody that comes to me to take time off, I'm like, oh yeah, go. You need that break. Like, get out of here. But when it comes to me, like, it doesn't work that way. Like, I can't take time off. I can't do this. I have to be the leader and show that I'm in the office all the time, or that I'm always available. And she's like, you need to work on that. It's like, of course. There's another thing that I need to put more thought into, of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I find that a really interesting thought. Like, you want to put yourself in a position that, oh, I'm the hard worker, I'm the one that's always working and whatnot. And but yet you also want to encourage people to take the time off and take care of themselves. But you have a hard time leading by example that way by default, right? Is kind of how I interpret that. And it's interesting, as you open yourself up to allow people to take the time off. Like, you have to almost set the example in that regard as well, by taking time off yourself, which I think is really interesting. Do you feel the same way, Amelia? I should know. I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyways. Do you feel the same way when it comes to, working by example and having to set the example of always working?
Yeah, I mean, I think of it less as setting the example of always working, but just like that I'm just always working. It's like, not like, oh, I got to work hard so everyone else works hard. If I don't, then they won't. And I guess there's an element of that. Like, if they just see me playing all the time, maybe they'll think I don't take it seriously, and then they'll stop taking it seriously. I think that's definitely a real kind of facet of what goes on there. But yeah, this is like something I keep reevaluating, because so you guys know like the pivot story of having to like pivot our massage company into a mental health company with COVID. And like what saved it and what made it possible is my ability to work like insane amounts of time and do all the things no one else would be willing to do, right? Like, but I worked so hard, I made myself sick and I got an autoimmune disease and I didn't sleep and just there were definitely heavy costs to that choice to keep the company going and to pivot into something new. If I could go back, I wouldn't make any different decisions, actually, even though it made me sick and it was really hard on my family and all these things. I still feel like it was the right thing. So I struggle with it because I know, like what Johnny said, like I know I can execute and I know that if I have control, like I can do this and I can do that. Giving up and delegating is really hard. And also, taking that time off. So in fact, I found myself, so my CXO came up the other day to my house. We were working in my home office and he brought his mountain bike because I live up in Midway. And so you can just mountain bike like into a bunch of trail systems right out my front door. And I just got a bike. And so I was so excited. But we're on our ride and I'm telling him how like I've made this commitment to myself that every day that the trails are good, like not today where it's like snowing and raining, but every day that I can, I will get outside on my mountain bike. And he was like, really? Every day? I was like, yeah. I said, yesterday I took 2 hours in the middle of the day and went for a mountain bike ride. But then I felt like I had to justify. I was like, but then I'll work later and I'll work on Saturday to make it up. I mean, I still got to get all my work done because I don't want people to think I'm not taking it seriously. So I definitely feel a lot of that same. It's optics, right? I remember my board talking to me about optics once and like the message you're inadvertently sending to the rest of the people on the team.
Sure. But what does that bike ride do for your mental health? Like for your ability to focus and actually get the work done when it's time to work?
I mean, it just makes me happier. I don't know. I guess I'm better at working and leading and relating to people if I'm happier, but it just makes me happy to be outside and in the sun and moving. It makes me feel strong and powerful, which is important for me as a leader, to kind of conquer those trails and stuff. But it's just really hard. It's so hard to give yourself. And I'm just like Johnny. I'm like, I've never turned down PTO. People ask for it. At any given time, there's like basically one employee on our team on PTO at any time, any day. So yeah, it's something. I mean, my husband's asked me the same thing. He's like, everyone else gets to take time off all the time. And I've actually had to cash that in a little bit over with some of the stuff going on with my family. I took 3 full weeks off as we kind of figured out what we were going to do and what was going on. And I just wasn't in a mental state to be able to work at all. I could barely function. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it was great. I appreciate you opening up a little bit about your situation. I think it's really interesting and good for people to hear. One of the things, the whole reason we're having these key conversations is we want people to hear that they're not alone, that they're everybody else is having their own personal experiences, whatever that might be. But just hearing people talk about it and willing to talk about it, I think changes the optics around mental health. We're up on time, so I'm going to end on one last question, if you will all indulge me, and it's more or less a pay it forward type question, based off all of the conversations we've had today, the experiences that you guys have had, and what you have learned. What is the one thing that you would recommend other leaders in your position and kind of who've felt the same way as you felt? What's the one piece of advice, or what would you recommend that they do in order to either improve their mental health or allow them to become kind of more empathetic in their leadership? If there's one thing that you've done that you really thought would be worth sharing, what would that be? We'll start with you, Amelia, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is probably what I'm guessing Johnny's going to say too, is doing your own work, right? The best thing you can do to do all the things that you just listed, be a better leader and be more empathetic and affect your organization for good too, is just to really spend that time working on yourself and trying to improve yourself and understanding, like Johnny said, getting curious. I feel a bad feeling and I'm like, why is that? Like, where's this feeling coming from? Why am I responding like that? What does that mean? And kind of, doing your own work and setting that example too. if your employees see you kind of focusing on yourself, whether that's taking time off and relaxing, or, you know, going on a therapeutic journey from a mental health standpoint. I think focusing on doing what you need to do for yourself really goes a long way.
Awesome. Johnny, how about you?
Yeah, I feel that the stigma around mental health is going away, and I'm really excited about that. I think so many more people have spoken up about that. But yeah, I'm right there with Amelia. Working on yourself is the answer, but to me, like, you need a therapist. You need to sign up for therapy. There's a bunch of different types of therapists. There's different personalities as therapists. There's some you might like, some you might not like, and I just think you just need to move forward and pick one and try it out and go with it for a while. And whoever that therapist is, they're going to push you and teach you new things, and you're going to self-reflect, and it's going to help you look in the mirror. And I've done several. I've had several therapists. I've had different types of therapy, and all of it has been beneficial. All of it has helped me grow as an individual. So that's my recommendation to everyone listening. And by the way, Nivati, we use Nivati at our company, so you know, our people have a really easy way to go and sign up for a therapist. So that's been huge for our business, and people that maybe wouldn't have signed up otherwise. You know, it gives them an opportunity. So I'm grateful for Amelia and what she does.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's great. And I concur. I mean, the counselors that I've talked to have really allowed me to reflect on myself and made me, you know, better manager, you know, better at work, better at family life. So I think that's excellent advice there. Well, thank you for your time. We're up against the clock here, but Amelia, Johnny, thank you so much for joining us. We will have another conversation actually this Thursday for those that want to participate again. We're going to be joined with manager at Campfire, and we're going to be talking about the power of community and what community can actually do for you. So please tune in. It will be at 12:30 Mountain Time, 2:30 Eastern Time for those that would like to join in on that conversation. And if you miss it live, you're more than welcome to catch the recording, which we'll have available as well. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to doing this again on Thursday. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Amelia.
Yep.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, David. Bye.